Good morning, everybody. Today I'd like to announce we officially start Revelation chapter 14. Yay! And I never intended to go 2 weeks on the Beatitudes. My first initial thought was I'm just going to read through it the first week and we'll cover it and then go straight into 14 because I didn't think there'd be much discussion. I didn't think anyone really cared too much. But I was wrong, so we discussed it for 2 weeks.
It was a great discussion. Yep.
It was a great discussion. Sure, I thought it turned out really well, but I was not planning on, just read through it, okay, no discussion, let's go to the next section. But it turned out being that I thought, I figured that was the Lord's stuff.
Yep.
Perfectly okay. And if this lesson turns out the same way, I'm perfectly okay with that too. So in chapter 14, the big picture, and I say it's like the forest from the trees. The big picture is, in my opinion, is victory and defeat. We see in the first, as the chapter opens, we see Christ victorious with the 144,000 on Mount Zion. Then we see some angels' proclamations. And then Christ again victorious, a vision of Christ like twice reaping the earth. Maybe harvesting, and then the grapes of wrath, many of the commentators call it. So, big picture, we see Christ victorious, and then we see him twice, first in the chapter, of course, at the end of the chapter, of course, and there in the middle we see this defeat. Since we're talking about the beast, and those that worship the beast and receive his mark, and what they'll be going through, which is not a pleasant thought. So, we're going to jump right into it. Maybe after today, we'll have a better understanding of who the 144,000 is. I hope. I'm going to read verses 1 through, 5. And then I looked and beheld a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, like the voice of many waters, like the voice of a loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And in the mouth was found no deceit, for they were without fault before the throne. Okay, so what do we know so far? What do we know so far about that 144,000? Did anyone have any clue?
They're Jewish.
They're Jewish.
They're taken from the 12 tribes.
Taken from the 12 tribes.
Missionary force.
Missionary force.
They're virgins.
What is
Did
it?
we know that?
Virgins.
Chase, yes.
They're virgins. And I sort of see him as, this is how I see it. Book of Romans. He goes back to the Book of Romans. We're grafted into Israel. He says he's given Israel blindness for now until the fullness of the Gentile time is come, right?
Yep.
I believe that fullness of the Gentile age will end at the start of Jacob's trouble, when the tribulation starts. That's when I think he says he'll turn back towards Israel. This is just me talking. These 144,000 are coming out of, God has removed their blindness, and he is redeeming them once again. He has sealed these 144,000 Jews. They are remnant / evangelists. That's what I think will be their job. I think they will probably be in Israel, just sharing the gospel as a remnant and leading people to Christ, I believe.
Can I add one more to your list?
You sure can.
This is one that kind of... So it says, what verse? So before you get to verse 4, there at the end of 3, the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. Mm-hmm. These are current men. These aren't some kind of spiritual beings or some kind of angels. These are not only Jews, men and Jews from the earth. They're present then, right? It's not like they've died and gone, they're coming back and blah, blah, no.
Right. They are normal people.
They are normal people.
Normal people.
Yep.
That God has put his seal on and is going to use in Israel, in that part of the world, during Jacob's trouble.
And also the first fruits, like with sacrifice, first fruits were always given
I
first.
think the binder goes into that, if
Okay.
I remember correctly. I'd have to look.
Clarence, did you have something?
Give me a second. Yeah, because they're gonna be preaching the gospel. And like you're hearing the gospel today, instead of saying amens, you're gonna be saying ouch more often. Cause they're gonna be stepping on the toes like Jesus, and they're gonna be preaching Jesus. They're not gonna be preaching anything else.
Right. And so what do we see in the passage? There's a few things that you can see in the passage that sort of help you understand them. They got the father's name written on their head, which is, I think, is in contrast to the end of chapter 13, the fathers of the beast who have what? The mark of the beast on their hand or head. Yes, Clarence?
Satan is imitating God. The Antichrist is imitating Jesus Christ. And the false prophet will be imitating the Holy Spirit. Christ, God sealed these with 144,000 in their forehead. Well, Satan's going to do the same thing by sealing him, it says, in the forehead as well. He's just mirroring imaging God.
Right.
Counterfeit.
Counterfeit, yeah.
There you go, from
Yeah.
day one.
Another thing that the passage says specifically is they were not defiled with women. They were virgins. And wow, how wise are these guys? Wow. Right, I was like,
That was in the go-ahead class.
It's a miracle they found 144,000.
as a man who is single, and I'll go, just for fun, go like do online dating stuff. You know how difficult is dating today? What would it be like dating in the tribulation?
Yeah.
So they're like, listen, we're not having any part of this. I was like, man, these guys are really wise. But it's because the next quote you see in the passage is they follow the Lamb. And they're dedicated to Him and not the things of this world.
Take up thy cross.
Right, go ahead, Clark.
Cause it kind of perverted in a way, cause I was thinking who they could be. And I'm wondering if the Catholic Church is going to try to claim them, as nuns.
Right. And you know what? I thought this.
Preach.
I didn't do any research on this, but I think the modern term for Levi or priest is a Cohen. And I saw a video about a young Cohen that would be able to be a priest because he had never been around a dead body his whole life. He never went to a hospital, never went to a graveyard or anything. And I thought, I wonder if there is something about the priesthood or something in Jewish culture that is about they've kept themselves from women too. Now, I've never done the research on that, but I just thought, I wonder if this is like nothing. You're saying there's nothing?
Yeah, cause
He's looking at me and I'm shaking my head no.
Oh, okay.
don't they have to be Christian Jews, right?
Yeah.
They can't be like,
If they're following Jesus,
Yeah.
they're Christians.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So I don't think that would work.
Well, I would word it differently.
I
They're
would too.
following the Messiah.
There you go.
I wouldn't call them Christians. They're following the
followers.
Messiah, who is Jesus.
Yeah, well, Christian is Christ followers.
I know I'm splitting hairs. It's semantics. But I'm
Oh,
just
I got
saying.
you. I got you.
Right, I sort of agree with Michael.
Messianic.
When it comes to Jews, I'm like,
Messianic.
that's just how I see them.
Yeah.
But again, we're just splitting hairs. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
They are Christians.
They're faithful one way or the
They're
other.
faithful.
Right.
And we're just, and we are part of that, right?
Servants.
Just,
Faithful
just when
retention.
you use Jew in a broad term, it's always open, right?
Right. And it says they were redeemed among men, meaning God called them, redeemed them. Yes.
Like Jeff said, that that part gets me a little bit. I don't really know if I've got a point to this, but I think it's interesting because as we get further into the chapter here, we're talking about the harvest, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
These are the first fruits. So basically, there's the first swing of the sickle to
Okay,
harvest.
so let me
harvest
read.
the crop.
Let me read from the binder here on page 58, since you brought up this, and we'll see if this
Started the rabbit hole.
helps a little
Wait
bit.
on the rabbit trail.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, 58 at the bottom. What are first fruits? Using the author Travis Snow's well-documented book, The Biblical Feast and the Return of Jesus, Mr. Snow writes on page 54 about Leviticus 23, 9 through 14. The barley harvest in the spring began with the first fruits offering, which was made on the second day of unleavened bread. That's the 16th of Aviv, however you say it. First fruits, quote, first fruits represented the whole harvest, and by giving God the first fruits, the Israelites declared that all of the harvest rightly belonged to Him, God. You recall Paul calling Jesus the first fruits in 1 Corinthians 15. Jesus was raised from the dead on the 16th of Aviv, the exact day when the Feast of First Fruits was being celebrated in Jerusalem. We know for certain the date is the 16th of Aviv, when these 144,000 in chapter 14, verse 1, are standing with the Lamb. We also can glean by John saying they are the first fruits, the whole harvest of Israel, that is the nation, will be his also. And then I say here personally, I said, I still am not sure of their mission. I know other people have different, this is just my opinion. First fruits to me indicate the resurrection. Maybe they do come to earth to witness to the Jews during this period, which is kind of what I lean towards in this, but I'm open to, the discussion. So that's my 2 cents about just doing the first fruits is an important thing to understand.
Right.
But again, as we've been talking throughout the whole series, this is a very Jewish document.
Right.
They reference this kind of Jewish stuff constantly, but as Christians in the church, we don't ever really read this kind of stuff. We don't really go back and research what does that mean, Jewish and first fruits and
So in a way, what you're saying is that first fruits there was symbolic of God saying, Israel belongs to me.
A redeemed Israel.
yeah, and I think
Symbolic of
he reaps these first fruits. This is my opinion. Because I've always struggled with who they actually, I know they're Jews, that much I do know. But where this takes place, when this happens, that sort of thing, that they are the first resurrection of a reborn nation of the 12,000 each before he saves the whole nation. That's what my speculation, my opinion. And like I said, I'm open to just, a lot of different things on this, but that's kind of where I'm at now.
I agree with that, because I think sometimes we have a hard time, nation of Israel that we see over there, and the people of God of Israel.
Right.
Sometimes we have a hard time distinguishing. Now, back in the day, people might have looked at Paul and thought, well, he's just a nation of Israel, because he's not a person of God. But Paul was redeemed, and he was a persecutor of Christians. You go to Israel today, they'll persecute you. I don't know if they might be one of the people doing the persecution might end up being one of the 144,000.
Paul was like a Pharisee, wasn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was a
Clarence
Pharisee
is in
of
here. Clarence is something.
He described himself as a Pharisee of Pharisees.
Yeah, Pharisee of Pharisees.
Hebrew hardcore.
The 144,000 is similar to Christ in his ministry. You really never heard about Christ until he started his ministry. These 144,000 are going to be similar. You're not going to hear about their ministry until it's time for them, and then God turns them loose. And they're going to be preaching the word of God in thousands and thousands. The reign, Hosea 10:12 says it is the reign of righteousness, but it's about sowing the ground of the first fruits too. So
And I see the first fruits as, this is just what little I know of
The day of
first
salvation.
fruits, right, is like it was when you offered a sacrifice, it was the first you had, the best of the best. It was the cream of the crop, the first of the harvest, You didn't wait till I got old and stale. You take the best of the best. And so that's how I see God sees these people. These are going to be His chosen people. Taken from first, there'll be no deceit without fault. Okay, well, I understand. They're not going to be sinless, but being redeemed through Christ, through the Messiah, they will be without deceit, without fault.
I agree.
And the reason I think they're resurrected, I think they've been martyred, is because of verse 3. And it says, they sang a new song before the throne. Well, the throne at this point is still above. It hasn't come to, well, I guess it may have, because there in verse 1 it says the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion. So, yeah, so that, you know.
I see this as a
But
picture
I
of
wanna-
the future when Christ has returned. He set up His kingdom. The 144,000 are there
Yeah.
on Mount Zion. And this is a picture of after His return, we see this coronation of Christ. These guys are singing praises to Him, a song that they know. Clarence, go ahead.
Well, I'm not finished.
Okay, hold on.
I'm not finished.
I'm sorry.
So, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to make one thing, clear again. And I know we've said it in this class, but I want to keep emphasizing the nation of Israel, despite these 144,000, the nation of Israel, Zechariah, at the very end, on the day of the Lord, when He comes in the clouds, is when the whole nation, whether they believe or not, will believe in Messiah. They will believe in the Messiah at that point. So all those naysayers, all the Orthodox that hate us, will at that very moment, according to Zechariah, when they see whom they pierced, it'll be just like them like Paul on the road to Damascus. They will, in one microsecond, they'll see him and like, oh my God, what have we done?
I think so. I'll start with the 144,000 and expand it to the nations. Clarence?
These 144,000, and what we talked about earlier, this is where I believe in the end, the rapture right before Christ comes. Because next thing you know, they're singing a song with the Lamb in Zion, which also could be heaven. Okay, how did they get there if they were on the earth? Is through the rapture to there. They're singing a song that only them and Christ knows.
That's right.
They mark in, but yet here they come back to the foot with Christ because all it empties heaven. But there's also a verse in, a lot of people have a hard time in Revelation. I don't know where it's right at. And all of His people will be saved. That's, in other words, He came back to save His people from destruction, but not the change of heart. We will see that come to play at the end, right before the great white judgment.
Correct. And I think this is the first establishment of global government. I know we think that the Antichrist will have global government. He'll rule the world. He will have partial control over some places, but when Christ is on Mount Zion, at the end, that's when the whole world will be ruled by one person. And that's what Zechariah says. They'll have to come up to the temple to offer these, celebrate these festivals. It'll be a global government at that point, not before.
But it'll be our king ruling.
Yeah.
Right, the true king ruling.
Remember, it's an imitation when Satan rules.
Yeah.
Right.
Beast of the earth, right?
Did you have
Is that
something,
right?
Max? Did you want to say?
No, I'm just making myself comfortable.
Okay.
Trying to look stylish over here, in case someone's taking pictures. No, sorry.
Because with Satan, you're forced to worship him. With Christ, you do it because you want to.
And that's where I think the Antichrist rule is going to be significant in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's not going to be small.
Right.
It's going to be
Right, it's gonna be
significant.
big.
That's right.
All right.
Hey, just something Michael was saying about this. So if you go to Isaiah 25, which is the wedding feast in verses 6 through 8, but in verse 3, Isaiah does write, therefore a strong people will honor you. So that's before the feast occurs. That's these could be these 144,000. Just to muddy the water some more.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm always, not to make it muddy, but I just flipped over and saw that sentence, like,
Does anyone have any more thoughts on the 144,000 and this picture or this scene of Jesus on Mount Zion. If not, we'll continue on. And I'm gonna do something a little bit different here. I have to know we do this every week.
Okay, Pop? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just wait.
Good play.
Here is our turn for our rabbit trail.
Oh, yay.
Now we're gonna try to do it in an organized fashion instead of just chaotic.
Boo.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try.
You ever tried herding cats?
You
Said rabbits, that'd be hard.
I'm pretty good at that.
Does that mean you're in the middle and everybody's running from you?
Probably so after this.
We're
They may
already
be.
off topic.
After this next section, they won't. But, there are things in the Bible that, in Revelation, that I thought at a time. Now, this is sort of off topic, off chapter 14. And I want to know what you guys think. Now, anytime I see one of these, I always picture I always imagine a certain song. Anytime I see these helicopters, you've seen them in movies, they're always playing a certain song.
The click block, the Cry of the Valkyrie, or what's it?
What is it?
Cry of the Valkyrie?
That may be one of them.
Are you talking about the Apocalypse Now?
Well, I wanted to play a
Cry of the
song
Valkyrie.
when I showed this, but I knew that YouTube would strike it
Yeah.
and pull it down without it, if I put it.
Yeah.
Well, they pulled mine down when I said that your religion ain't changing you, you may need to change your religion, so I got barred from
We got
Facebook.
marked, right, it doesn't take much. So I'm gonna try my best to do this song for you, okay? I'm gonna read the lyrics. It goes, "Bow-now, bow-now." And this is when I see these helicopters, this is what I think. Some folks
This is a rabbit hole.
are born made to wave the flag. Who?
Oh,
They're red,
well,
white, and blue.
Reading Bible. Yeah.
It ain't me,
Fortunate
it ain't
son.
me. I ain't no senator's son, son. It ain't me, it ain't me. I ain't no fortunate one. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's pretty fortunate son. Because
Supposed to be my
That's the old Vietnam song.
the old Vietnam song, because anytime you see an attack helicopter or a helicopter in Vietnam, that's the song they would
They
play.
use it in the movies. Though.
They use it in movies all the time for helicopters. So when I saw that, I thought, and then it's like, I was thinking about it, the AH-64, the AH-1Z, the M128, the M135, all these attack helicopters. And you know, when I was growing up, maybe, or you read certain books, people will say that certain passages in the Bible are about attack helicopters in Revelation. I'm here to tell you, no. There we go. Now, there are no attack helicopters anywhere from Genesis
Isn't that
to
the girl
Revelation.
that called me a dork?
One of them. So there are no attack helicopters in Genesis to Revelation. None of them. There's no one. None of them.
What about the locusts?
The locusts are not the helicopter.
Because the locusts
The locust or locust?
But here's the rabbit hole I want to go down, because I was curious what you guys thought. Because there are things sometimes we think about Revelation, and then all of a sudden we've gone through this study, and you might realize, oh, that's not what it's saying. And I'll give you an example. The four horsemen of the apocalypse. I thought, okay, black, that's just death, you know. Red's just war coming on the earth. Sickly, pale, that's just pestilence coming on the earth. But going through this study, I've realized that, as you look in Zechariah, the Old Testament, that these four horsemen have been on the earth before.
Yep.
It's not the first time. So these are not new things. So that was new to me. That was like something I had not realized just going through this study. And then another thing was,
Well, that's what we've been saying, is that all this stuff here in Revelation is in the Old Testament. All you gotta go do is look.
right. And then the other thing was, when I was doing Revelation 2 and 3 about the mark of the beast, that you don't need a microchip, you don't need that to do for someone to buy or sell. So just going through this study has made me see some things differently. So I wanted to create this rabbit trail real quick, because I wanted to know, is there something that you have seen in this lesson, or anything that we've learned throughout Revelation that you thought was one way, but after going through this class, you realize, it may not be that way. Is there anything in this class? Or is it just me?
No.
Maybe it's just me. I was curious to know, is anyone else experience this?
I don't know. Look at the size of those stingers on those machines.
Very good, Daryl.
Yeah.
When's this for?
The whole thing.
Oh, my
The whole thing?
Yeah, because
It was a locust coming.
before, I actually thought they were monsters.
That they were actually real monsters.
And I found out they're nations, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But he's looking at Baba Black Sheep, if you remember the series and how they painted their planes and choppers, they were dragons and that.
right, that's him. But that's interesting. So Clark, you thought the beasts, when they talking about the different beasts and stuff, you thought they were real monsters showing up on the earth,
Yeah, that's what I never read.
right?
Seriously, that's what I never read.
And I've sort of come to the conclusion that like the locusts, they are like a evil spirit. They are a demonic spirit. There's something supernatural going on. And so that was sort of new to me. Is there anything? Is it? I guess
Guys,
maybe it's just me.
can I ask another question real fast? So, I don't remember what part of Revelation it is. When he was talking about the earth opening up and the monsters coming out.
Out of the pit.
Yeah.
That's where the scorpions are. Yeah. The
Is
smoke.
that actually real stuff, or is that also like, I say real stuff, I mean, is that actually a monster, or is that like an
I don't think
actual-
they're monsters. I think they're
Fallen
demons.
Yeah.
Oh,
Fallen
Demons and
angels.
fallen,
That's
fallen watchers, fallen angels, fallen sons of God. You know, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
them.
okay.
Now, whether or not we can physically see them, or not, I don't know. But they do sting the unbeliever, whatever the sting means, and they suffer for 5 months and can't die.
So that's not symbolic, right?
That's
an
not
actual-
symbolic,
okay.
right?
That's what I was trying to say.
So going back to what you were saying, like I'll tell you what I learned
Okay.
in this study was when we were in chapter, I think it was 9, about that 200 with the 200 million
Oh, yeah.
horse
It's
army,
it's not
whatever.
really 200 million, but.
Well, 200. The word million doesn't exist in Greek or in ancient history. That didn't come into existence from. It was a French word, million, until the 15th century. But what it does, what all the translations, if you go back and look, will say 10,000 times 10,000.
The number
What-
exists, it's just not the name.
They didn't have a number for million, okay?
Yeah.
But what for me was seeing that phrase, that terminology, that every time it is mentioned, it's God's army. But we've always been taught
Yeah.
through tradition that it's the devil's army. And I don't agree with that now because I see that everywhere else. Well, why would this be changed? So I think it's God's army, the 200.
So I don't think the devil ever got kind of.
And we already know, because we discussed it, that there's no army on earth that has 200 million. So it's not an
The
army
devil
on
ain't got
earth.
that kind of army either way.
But I'm just saying, to me, that's one of the things I came across.
Very interesting. That's very
And
interesting.
Clark, I would say that you're the general concept of the church in general, because the church in general, well, what's symbology, what's not symbology, it's too difficult. I don't have time for this, and we don't study it
Yeah.
as the church should.
Right.
And then we could get on big debates. The devil fell 2 centuries ago from heaven. He's no longer in heaven. No, that's not the case. We could get in great debate as a church.
True.
But us studying this to the depth that we have, how many churches, how many classes do that?
None, because honestly, I've had to
Yeah.
I had to tell a couple people about it because I talk about it, and I was sharing it with them, and to my surprise, they never read it either. So
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah, that's
experience
pretty
here
common.
that made me go out there and say it to somebody else.
Most
Or you
people,
could be like me and you've read it and you just kind of read over it.
exactly.
The words, you read the words.
You read the words, you really didn't
Stand in
understand
heaven.
what you're reading.
Well, plus you're taught that the trumpets, the bowls, all that's separate. Then here we're learning it.
And it doesn't mean that we're going to know every little
No,
single
right.
thing in detail.
Until it happens.
But we're commanded to read it, understand it, and then persevere, overcome, and endure.
I think Michael's got a point in it. What he just said is that there's some of this that's crystal clear and becomes more crystal clear as you study it, right? And God reveals it. But there's, and not just in Revelation, but in the rest of the Bible, stuff that's still fuzzy.
Yeah.
The details
Oh, yeah.
are fuzzy.
Yeah.
And your faith and your test of your faith rest in that fuzziness.
That's
Yes.
right.
Like, I know this part's true and it's gonna happen, so that means the rest of this is true and gonna happen, even though I don't understand the details, right?
Yeah.
And to me, the significance here is that we were willing to dive into it. We were willing to allow some of our thoughts to be challenged, to have discussion with it, and then say, can I believe it? Can I not believe it? This is discipleship at its finest. You won't find any more in-depth discipleship than discussing the details of, I don't know.
Right. I sort of see the reason it's so, everything's not clear is so that every generation of people from the start of the church age can look at it and say, this is me, this applies to me, this is about us, I need to apply this to myself. So it's not like, okay, this is definitely not about for me. And if you see in Revelation saying, well, this part, it's not for me because we're not gonna be here, or we're not gonna. No. This is for us, all of it. So I sort of see it like any generation will look at this and say, okay, I need to apply this to my life.
Even Paul thought it was gonna happen in his lifetime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the seven churches, when they were first in the persecution,
Yeah.
I just probably bet on they were like, it's right here today.
Well, can you imagine being alive in Jerusalem in 70 AD when they
Yeah.
destroyed the temple and sacked the
Oh, yeah.
city? You'd be like, oh, well, here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
You're thinking it's happening.
Yeah, that's game
It's
on.
gonna happen, you're thinking it's happening.
They didn't even have helicopters.
I
Right.
know.
What were they gonna do about that part?
Oh my goodness. Okay. This is sort of on time, but we'll go ahead and I guess we'll get started at the next section. We won't get very far.
What
Next
verse
section.
did we get through?
We're
4?
at like 5, 6 verses.
5, did we?
Yeah,
We got all the way through
we did
5.
really good.
Well,
We can start the next one. The next section.
We're on 6.
Yeah, we're on verse 6, the 3 angels. I'll read this next section. This is the part of defeat, I think. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the streams of water. And another angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen. It is fallen, that great city, because she has made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Then a third angel followed them, saying, with a loud voice, if anyone worships a beast in his image, and receive his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here's in other words, patience. Here's the endurance. He's telling you, stay firm in your faith. Because if you do worship the beast or receive his mark, you see what happens to you. Here is the patience of the faith, and those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And then here's one of the Beatitudes. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, right, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Lord, that they may rest from their labors and their works. That heavenly proclamation. First thing the angels, the first angel has a heavenly proclamation. And he says, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. I've read a lot about that first angel, and I have a belief that is like contrary to everything I have read.
All right.
I
Tell us.
Okay. Do not kick me out of the class. But that heavenly proclamation. Because I'm reading it and I'm saying, Okay, it says he has the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of judgment has come. I'm reading that and thinking, and I'm reading that in context with 3 other verses. I'm reading it in context with Galatians chapter 1, the entire chapter, Galatians chapter 1. Paul says, if a man or I, or even an angel of heaven, preaches a different gospel than what I've said, let them be eternally condemned. Yes, let them be. So the gospel is not going to change. And then, Ephesians 3:10, well, we talked about this last week, how the angels have God is manifesting his wisdom through us as an example to the spiritual realms and people in heavenly places. Right? Talked about that last week. And then 1 Peter chapter 3, I believe, it says that even the angels have desire to look into these things. Like salvation, they don't experience what we do, don't understand what we do, but we're an example for them. So I don't think, and most people say that this angel is going to share the gospel to the world. I just don't think he is. I think he,
Even though it says it.
it says, I know. Okay, I look at it like this. He has the gospel to share, and he says this, which is not the gospel. He has the gospel to share. Again, like I said, you may kick me out of this class. He has the gospel message to share for all the nations, but he says this, fear God. I think anytime an angel appears on the earth, what do they say to the people?
Do not be afraid.
Don't be afraid, because fear is something you see when the angels appear. Now that sounds like a typical angelic message to you. That sounds like what an angel would say. Fear God. Anytime an angel appears, who John refers, they stand it.
It would be very interesting to go back and look at the root of the word fear
Yes.
and the translation,
Yes.
because I think in a lot of translations that's roughly respect.
Yes, it is. Healthy fear.
Awe.
Respect
It's a healthy
and
Yeah,
appreciation.
awe. Have
Yes.
awe.
Yeah,
Right.
awe. It's a little bit of, but it's not
I'm waiting
quite
to get out
the
of the
fear we think is. Oh my gosh, I'm getting ready
Like
to
I'm
get
scared.
trampled.
But think of the context, what's going on at this moment when
Yeah.
he says fear God too.
Right.
Yeah,
I say
that's
this,
true.
fear
Yeah.
God, because you're about to see what happens if you
Gotta see
don't,
his wrath.
when
Yeah.
you'll experience God's wrath.
Isn't that,
In the context, the following verse talks about those that did not fear God, they are burning for all eternity. And I know that's like,
And who's he talking to right now? Is he talking to us because we already had the healthy fear? We already had the awe.
He's not talking to believers.
Is he talking to the world?
He's talking. It just says it.
My question
Every
to you
nation,
becomes
tribe,
this,
language,
we need to clarify this point, or you need to clarify this
They-
point. You say he's got the gospel, but he doesn't share the gospel. What are you saying the gospel is that he's not sharing?
I think the
Because
gospel.
that's a little bit open
Okay.
to interpretation.
Okay, I think that gospel is the same gospel that Paul says, if me or an angel in heaven preaches it.
Yeah, but what is the gospel?
The gospel is that man is a sinner. God sent his son to die on the cross to redeem us. He was a propitiation for our sin. He took sin upon himself so that we would have no sin. That's sort of the gospel message. And that's not what he's proclaiming. He's saying, fear God.
Well, the gospel is a lot more
And give him glory.
than what you just said.
Yep.
And I think this is because of our tradition, of our church traditions. Like, we think of it as evangelical. So basically, because what did John the Baptist preach?
Repent.
And why? Because the kingdom is near. And so this angel is basically emphasizing the judicial, penal side of the gospel. And if you remember in Matthew 24:14, what are they talking about on the Olivet Discourse? When will these signs be of your coming? And one of the things he says, the whole gospel will be preached Let me read it real quick. I got it right here. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all the nations. And then what will happen? The end will come. That's what this guy's doing. He's proclaiming
Right.
what Jesus said. They go hand in hand.
And we've said that this is a Jewish document. Jesus in all the discourses talking to Jews. John is a Jew. Jesus is, sending these angels to tell John, go look at this, go do that. So what are these Jews wanting?
They want
The Jews are wanting the Messiah of Israel to come fulfill the
the
covenant.
throne of David to come and sit
That's
on the
the
throne
gospel message
and
according to
rule.
the Jew.
And according to the Jew, he was gonna be a warrior king.
Right.
Yeah.
But he is going to come and fulfill the covenant.
So, because we're getting ready to get into the bowl judgment, and so what's happening is he's like,
Christians, and I got one more thing. Christians mess this up all the time because they think, well, I'm going to go to Israel and save the Jews. And don't you want to believe in Jesus and go to heaven? Jews look at you like you're crazy because, no, I want to be here when the Messiah returns and fulfills the covenants and the promises to Abraham and Moses,
the
our
land
fathers.
promises, yeah.
We want the land, we want the people, and then we want to be the exalted nation. That's the gospel.
yeah,
That's what they want.
be a light unto the world.
Be a light unto the world. And then we're just all grafted into that. But at the end of the day, it's a fulfillment of the covenants, these promises God has made to Israel specifically.
But that's why we're having this discussion,
Right.
because, we all have different ideas. It doesn't mean you have to believe what I just said or what Travis just said.
What I just
But we
said.
throw them out
Right.
there so we can wrestle with them and come to our own, what the Holy Spirit helps us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another thing, reason I believe this way, because it's always been man's responsibility to share the gospel. Angels have never done that. God has given that to man to do, and specifically at
The
this time.
assumption you're using there.
Well, there's no recorded incident of an angel sharing the gospel.
Well,
It's not
Who
recorded.
shared the gospel
no,
with
the Great
Paul?
Commission was.
Jesus did.
Jesus did.
Right, but he
He
wasn't.
wasn't a
an angel.
man.
Right, he wasn't an angel.
Resurrected man, maybe.
So I'm just saying, it's always man's responsibility to do that. And specifically at this time, 144,000. But go ahead. That's just me, though.
So it's been Israel's responsibility.
In this time, it will be
Right.
correct. It's always been, and they failed to do it.
Yeah.
And they grafted the Gentiles. Anyway,
good.
That was good.
we're just going to have to stop, I guess, sort of slam on the brakes.
We made it halfway through that slide.
We got halfway through. And I might be able to use this slide all the way through. I'm not sure if I did. I think I have one more. Well, the next slide is though for the next angel. The next couple angels, so it's just that. Any more thoughts or?
Oh, we'll have a lot. We'll
I have a
save
lot.
it till next week.
Okay.
I have a lot. You probably keep me out of class like Travis.
Oh, wait a minute. There's gonna be no one left at this table. That's how we're gonna clear that.